so long as we do not get into politics, meaning those of us who feel that that we have a voice and things that we need to do, if we're not in politics, the wrong people will be in politics and make decisions on our behalf. Why is it that we don't have a conversation about young people on the continent getting involved in running for office? Most people tell you it's dirty. I don't want to be killed, right? But how can we sanitize our politics so that young people can go into office and compete and really where the competition becomes about ideas and moving our continent forward? Right now, when you look at people who go into politics and you look at the people who should be in politics, who are just out there writing articles or doing research, academic research, you wonder, so how do you want to advance our continent? Because at the end of the day, the real issue is about leadership.
Hey there, and welcome to Fanya Mambo Africa here at the Alpha House. If it's Friday, we have conversations going on. And today it's a very interesting conversation we're having. We've crossed our borders, that is Kenya, but we're still in East Africa. So that's also a beautiful thing, especially in this time and age. I have with me in studio Ambassador Fred Ngoga Gateretse. Did I pronounce the third one right?
You pronounce it extremely well. I'm impressed.
Oh, nice. Of course, that's a Burundian name. He's the AU advisor on political affairs, peace, and security. Karibu sana Kenya.
Asante sana. Always a pleasure to be in Nairobi.
Ah, nice. How is it down in in your home country?
Well, in my home country, first of all, Burundi is a beautiful place. Small country compared to Kenya.
Yeah.
A country that has been endowed with natural resources and many beautiful things. But unfortunately, my country has had since our independence different episodes of violence and governance issues, and we're still struggling actually to put the country on the right path. So we have some serious challenges, like all the countries in the region,
Yeah.
but ours are much more deeper because we're a country that has seen cycles of violence
Yeah.
over the years. Yes.
Okay. Very, it's the reality of many African countries at the moment, actually. And it's sad to see that we as a continent were put into a place of having borders, and now we keep fighting each other based on these borders that were put by colonialists in the beginning. But the bigger story now across the continent is actually South Africa. And of course, your involvement in terms of political affairs and security. When you look at I don't know whether to call it Afrophobia or xenophobia that is happening to fellow Africans in South Africa. What is your feeling about this, and what is the AU Commission feeling about this?
Well, thank you very much. I think we've had many statements about this issue by different leaders of the African continent. As a matter of fact, as about 2 days ago, we had the Executive Council of the African Union, and this issue was also brought up. It was tabled by the Republic of Ghana, and they wanted to look into this issue because it seems to be a recurring issue.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, it's not only limited to South Africa. There are some, maybe at a lower intensity, some other countries experiencing it. So the conversation has started about what is really ailing these countries. So a number of things. I had this conversation actually just as yesterday. Number one has to do with the issue of law enforcement. Because where there is law enforcement, where the government is really delivering to its citizens, and where there is law enforcement that is efficient, these acts of criminalities usually are dealt with legally,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Then there is the issue of illegal migration,
Yes.
which also needs to find an answer. But then again, the other way of looking at it is, look, as Africans, we feel that, especially with our Agenda 2063, where we are seeking to have the free movement of people and goods,
Yeah.
we feel that every African should feel that they are home in any African country, right?
Yes.
So how do you reconcile, the issue of illegal migration, the issue of free movement of people and goods, and then there is the issue of why is it that people are leaving their countries?
Yes.
The issue of governance. And I think the time has come to really look into it. How can we create jobs so that people can stay in their own countries and thrive in their own countries? Interestingly enough, I was saying that the one thing that will create jobs for us is actually economic integration. And economic
Yes.
integration actually requires the free movement of people.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's, I think there's a lack of strategic clarity in terms of how we look at this. So we need to reconcile all of that and come up with an answer. But I think that fundamentally, when people go and assault someone, when people go and break into their properties, that's a criminal act.
Yes.
And it needs to be dealt with legally.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I think there was I think it was the Rwandan president Paul Kagame one time when they opened up Rwanda to be visa free,
Yeah.
and people said, "But aren't you afraid that there's going to be all sorts of criminals who are going to come?" He says, "No, the state is organized. The state will deal with them.
We'll take care of that.
Simple."
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think in many African countries where we are, and in fact the trend is to really have visa free for other Africans.
Yeah.
Really, it's just to make sure that your law enforcement, that your politicians are kept in check, and that they don't instigate some of these things.
Okay. So from the leadership of the African Union and the Commission, looking at what is happening in South Africa, what is the feeling in terms of what is the way forward? Because it's a crisis we cannot ignore. It's a fact that South Africans are facing a crisis. Yes, this joblessness. It's not just a South African problem. Actually, it's several African countries. But in reality, what are the solutions that the AUC could offer to this?
Well, first and foremost, I think President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa addressed the Pan-African Parliament. I think it was on Monday. And he said that the issue, that South Africa cannot handle it alone, that we all need to work together as a continent to address this problem. And I think that what he meant by that, and this is my personal view, not the views of the African Union, I think that what he meant by that was we need to also address governance in our own member states. Why are people leaving those countries?
Yeah.
We need to address unemployment. We need to address, criminality. So it's a package in terms of addressing this issue. And by the way, this is not the first occurrence. I remember when we had our chairperson, Madame Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. She was South African,
Yeah.
and she was faced with the same issue. But there was something she said which has stuck with me. She said that this generation does not know Pan-Africanism. I was once invited to talk to a group of influencers, and from across the continent. They came to Addis Ababa, and then I was addressing them. And then I just, out of curiosity, asked them, each and every one of them, what is Pan-Africanism? Let me tell you that 10 of them gave me different answers about what Pan-Africanism was. We do not know Pan-Africanism.
That's
And by the way,
interesting.
I can even challenge you here. My answer about Pan-Africanism and your answer,
Might be
it will be
different.
totally different.
Yeah.
So I think that we need to reconnect with Pan-Africanism. We need to reconnect with the values of Pan-Africanism. Ubuntu. I am my brother's keeper. That my happiness will also depend on your happiness. So we really need to work on those things, especially with the younger generation. It baffles me that we don't even teach Pan-Africanism in our, in our schools.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But now that you've mentioned it, what does the African Union define as Pan-Africanism generally?
Well, first and foremost, we are one people, right? We are one people that actually, and that together we are stronger. I used to enjoy, Nelson Mandela used to talk about the 5 hands, actually the hand. We have 5 fingers, right?
Yeah.
Says that, the hand is only as strong as the fingers are together, right?
Yes.
And so for us, the way we define Pan-Africanism is one continent, one purpose, one vision, and most importantly, solidarity. Solidarity. It is important that people are, that the pain of someone in Sudan is felt in Kenya.
Yeah.
That the pain of someone in the Sahel is felt in South Africa, and so on and so forth. And I think that is one thing that we are trying to do, is us coming together. Interestingly, We have developed of late what we call the common African position. The common African position, meaning that when we go into international forums, we try to really work hard to promote a common African position.
Okay.
I'll give you an example. For example, we have what we call the Ezulwini consensus. Ezulwini consensus is basically about the role that the African Union should play within the UN. So we're demanding for 2 permanent seats in the Security Council and 5 non-permanent seats. That's what we call the Ezulwini consensus.
Okay.
And funny enough, it's been there for more than 10 years, but the powers that be do not want for us to, for that reform to happen. We try to have a common position on global crises, on the war, for example, in Ukraine, which affects us.
Yeah.
We try to really have a common position on the crisis in the Strait of Hormuz in Iran. There are task forces, and we try to guide our member states on how we can do that. Most importantly, over the years, because the AU has been there since 2002, of course, before it was the OAU,
Yeah.
we have adopted what we call normative frameworks, which it's almost like a set of principles, which really guides us in terms of how we respond to the different conflicts that we have. Our challenge now is only implementation.
Okay, that sounds very interesting. But the bigger question would be when all these things happen. I mean, we have 54 countries,
55 in the African Union.
55 in the African Union. That's the agreed.
Yes.
So now my question is, you see, already there's a question of the number of countries. I thought it should be standard.
Well, let me explain to you why we're in the African Union. Actually, we say 55 because of the issue of Western Sahara. Western Sahara is a founding member of the African Union. So we recognize Western Sahara as a member of the African Union. So that's why we say 55. But within the UN system, when we talk about African countries, they only recognize 54 because Western Sahara is not recognized within the UN. So for us, it is 55.
So now, as African Union, if the UN does not recognize a country like that, what role do you take in terms of fighting for these people? Because I want to believe AU should be the African voice.
It is the African
in terms
voice.
of making sure, I mean, this is a country.
Correct.
So how do you balance between that and telling UN either way this is a country? Because even in terms of the funding probably they put in the continent, then they wouldn't be considering that.
Well, first and foremost, we must, as a continent, before we can go global, we must be addressing first and foremost our issues on the continent. So the way we look at it is first handling our issues, then going global. Of course, we're also members of the United Nations, but we can have disagreements with the United Nations. But for us, first, I started by saying that we're seeking reform of the United Nations through the Islamic consensus. So when the United Nations, the P5, the powers that be, make certain decisions, we're not part of the conversation. So us, we try to address first and foremost our issues. There is a former president of Senegal that I like very much. His name was Sédar Senghor. He used to talk about Africans being first rooted in their continent, addressing their problems, then open up to the rest of the world. Because he used to say that if you don't understand who you are, it is difficult to open up to others and to build the bridges that you need to build. So we try to really work on addressing our issues. It's not a walk in the park, but we really try to work at it as much as we can. I will also say something that I find very interesting. And when I was not in the African Union, when I was in my previous career working in the United States, I used to be a huge critic of the African Union. In fact, I would criticize it day in and day out. I used to be on television shows in the US and so on and so forth, until the day I came to work for the African Union. And I realized that I didn't know the African Union. And many Africans do not know the African Union. Our communiques, our text, our positions on this and that, Africans don't know it.
But how are you supposed to know it? How best, now that you've been in the Union, how best do you think we as Africans should know and understand? And why do you feel then Africans don't feel as if African Union is impactful enough?
I think Africans love the African Union, but we're failing them. Why am I saying this? I think that what we need to do is stop having a conversation with ourselves and really try to connect with the African people. African people need to feel that we feel their pain. When human rights are abused, they feel that we should be speaking up. When there's economic shocks that are happening, they feel that we should speak up. When we have someone from Somalia who goes to the World Cup and is denied visa entry, they feel that we should speak up.
Yeah.
Those things that really affect Africans on a daily basis, they feel that we should be there. And we need to connect more. And I think that there is an effort with the current leadership to really do that. We're not there yet because at the end of the day, remember, we are not an international NGO. We are an intergovernmental organizations.
Yes.
So our bosses are actually our member states. Our bosses are your governments, our governments. And that restricts us in terms of what position we can take and what we cannot take.
Oh, okay. Now, a question that moves, I think, with a lot of people today is the Sahel region, the three countries
Correct.
where coups have taken place. And I think now they've had leadership of the juntas for, is it now 4 years and moving? What is the African Union take on these three countries?
You're talking about Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger,
Yes.
and which have been facing a lot of challenges. But for us, actually, the way, number one, we have a strategy for the Sahel. We have a strategy for the Sahel. Actually, it's a joint strategy between the African Union and the United Nations about the Sahel, where we have identified the number of problems that need to be dealt with. But for us, the most important thing, and as a chairperson of the African Union, who was recently in Mali and Burkina Faso, said was we should have shown solidarity to these countries early on when they were faced with the issues of terrorism.
Yeah.
So right now, the most important thing is to mobilize resources to help them fight against terrorism. And here I can tell you that through the African Union Peace Fund, we have actually dispersed about $2 million. Just as a show of solidarity, 1 million for Burkina Faso, 500,000 for Mali, and 500,000 for Niger. It's a token, but it's for us to show solidarity in the fight against terrorism. Then the second issue the conversation we're having with these three countries is how to restore constitutional order. Okay. Because eventually you have to go back to constitutional order because these are juntas. So we're having that conversation. And for us, it's one of our top priorities, the Sahel, because the way we define the Sahel in the African Union, by the way, I think it has about 18 countries. So it's not only those three. Those three are the epicenter. Yeah. And in fact, even within those three, there is an area called the Liptako Gurma area. Liptako Gurma is the tri border between the three countries and where there is a lot of terrorist activities. We do not want to lose those countries. We want to make sure that we assist them in dealing with terrorism, but also to address issues related to governance, which are eventually the most important thing for them.
Now, the other thing that especially the young people will question, and I think obviously being in your position, you understand that Traore has become, like this star president that people look up to because they feel he's a junta, yes, but his country is working, or he's working for his country, and things are moving or seem to be moving. On the other hand, you have countries where democracy worked, yes, an election was done, bungled perhaps. I'll give you a case scenario of we saw what happened in Tanzania, we saw what happened in Cameroon. When you look at such places where now people start feeling like this democracy thing is actually working against the people, what position then does African Union take in such a scenario where a junta is becoming a better in terms of governance than quote unquote a democratically elected leader?
I won't go into the details of
which is understandable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I will say this. I would say that first and foremost, we need to work to create situations where coup d'etats don't happen, because a coup d'etat begets a coup d'etat. In other words, once you go into a cycle of coup d'etats, it keeps recurring
Yeah.
over and over again. And I understand that the reason why maybe it's attractive to many young people is because I think the African population just wants rupture with the entrenched systems that we have. And so when they see something different that really calls for rupture, then they get excited. But it's not as easy as people think. I always say that governance is much more complicated than we think. And I've learned about it myself. Because what does that mean? It means that basically, first and foremost, you need to make sure that people have a social contract in terms of how they want to be governed,
Yeah.
where they want to go. Second, you need to create viable states which can really address the problems of people. I think you and I were talking about yesterday the issue of health, education,
Yeah.
and employment, how it can really settle certain things. So these are conversations that we need to have. I really try to avoid getting caught up in the storm of propaganda because we know that sometimes the reality is not what is always
Yeah. Yeah.
portrayed out there.
Then the bigger question in that would also be, I mean, I cannot confirm, but there have been rumors that these groups, these terror groups that are in the Sahel region, are mostly sponsored by the West because you destabilize a country, you bring your military, you're able to get the resources and extract. What's the feeling from the African Union perspective?
Well, I cannot comment because I don't have any evidence of these things. I just hear
Yeah.
what they say. In fact, last night I was even watching the the leader of Niger, Abdurrahman Chani,
Yeah.
talking about the recent attacks that happened in Mali. He was talking about the fact that at least what he was saying was that the attacks had come from three axes and that they were sponsored by an external actor using Africans
Yeah.
to really destabilize the country. Talked about Cote d'Ivoire, Benin, and so on and so forth, where they came from. What I can say is that there's a Nigerian proverb that I like. They always say, "A lizard cannot climb on a wall unless there is cracks on the wall." A lizard cannot climb on a wall unless there is cracks on the wall. In other words, whoever will want to take advantage of our situation, he cannot do so if we are united, if we agree on how to govern our countries, if we have a social contract on how we want to live together as a people.
Interesting perspective. Before I leave Sahel, the ECOWAS bloc kicked these guys out. From where you sit and how things are, was it a wise idea to kick them out for them to start the Sahel ASL, or was it better for them to work with them as they work towards regaining proper governance?
Well, first and foremost, they were not kicked out, they withdrew from the Sahel to create the Alliance for the Sahel. It's a sovereign decision. There are laws that govern the the economic bloc,
Yeah.
regional economic bloc, ECOWAS. So what is happening now is they made that sovereign decision based on their different considerations. What is happening now is that people are looking into how to bring them back into the bloc, and before bringing them back into the bloc, they are looking into how to work with that bloc, even if they're outside of the bloc. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, the chairperson of ECOWAS, President Diomaye Faye of Senegal, was in Mali about 3 days ago,
Yeah.
I believe. He was in Mali. The chairperson of the African Union, the president of Burundi, President Evariste Ndayishimiye, also visited the Sahel. So the idea is to see even if you're outside of your regional economic communities, how do we remain engaged so that eventually we can come to a situation where you're back in the country. I think the one thing that we all need to focus on is how do we help these countries defeat terrorism? How do we bring back constitutional order? How do we create viable states which can address the problems of their countries? How do we address intercommunal violence? And by the way, these are countries which are also hit a lot by the effect of climate change.
Yeah. Yeah.
So all these things are things that we need to be looking into.
Okay. Moving closer to East Africa, rather, actually in East Africa,
Yeah.
we have the Rwanda Congo conflict that has been going on for a while now. What's the status as we speak today, and which direction do you think that should be taking?
Well, first and foremost, I would say that the issue in the Democratic Republic of Congo has been there since the 1960s.
Yeah.
Congo, we call it a pays continent. It's like a continent. It's huge. It has 9 neighbors, and so for us, we think that first and foremost, there is number one a Congolese problem, number two there is a regional problem, and then number three there is a global problem that needs to be addressed with regards to DR Congo. Now, with regards to the DR Congo, our position is very clear. We say that number one is we want to see a ceasefire, so that Congo is a country that has, if I'm not mistaken, almost 300 armed groups. 300 armed groups. We want to see a ceasefire. That's number one thing we want to see. We want to see an all-inclusive political dialogue. We want to see regional cooperation to address the different issues. And we want to see also refugees return home, internally displaced people to return home, and for the killings to really stop. But specifically to this issue of Rwanda DRC, and I'm not inventing anything, by the way, I'm speaking in my name, not only as the AU. I mean, there is the Washington Accords, there is the Doha process, which has been ongoing.
Yeah.
There is a CONOPS, which has been adopted by the different security organs in terms of how to deal with the different security issues, which would address both the concern of the Democratic Republic of Congo, but also address also the concerns of Rwanda. What is needed now is the implementation of those agreements, which have been there. And I think that, number one, there needs to be the implementation of those agreements. Number two, we have also facilitators who are there. We have actually, as the African Union, we have Togo, Togo, which has been chosen to lead the facilitation. And the facilitation is also supported by former President Uhuru Kenyatta of Kenya, who actually has been tasked with dealing with the issues related to armed groups. We have former President Olusegun Obasanjo, who is actually also looking into the issues of internal dialogue and M23 and so on and so forth. We have former President of Central African Republic, Catherine Samba Panza, who deals with issues related to civil society and so on and so forth. We have former President of Ethiopia, Sahle-Work Zewde, who is in charge of actually dealing with issues related to the humanitarian situation. And then we have former President Masisi of Botswana, who actually is more looking into issues of natural resources and regional consensus. So we have a setup that is there, and that is looking into how to address the different problems that Congo has, because the issues in Congo actually affects all of us.
And those are different groups dealing with a lot of things. My question would be now on the Washington Accord. And here I'm asking because we saw President Trump meet with the two leaders a while back, and he was outright, we will help you resolve your problem, but we have to get the minerals. When you hear such statements and looking at it now from an African perspective, aren't we giving too much based on the fact that we know without Congo, a lot of these first world countries won't be, economically surviving?
I want to think that our leaders who went into that agreement understand that. And I want to think that, the most important thing is everybody has a strategy for the minerals for Africa. And
except the African.
Well, actually, we have developed, we have actually the African Mineral Agency now within the African Union. Most people don't know about it,
Okay.
which is helping African countries to negotiate in a smart way, in such a way that our minerals actually benefit our people rather than benefit others. But it's very interesting. We find ourselves almost like in 1885 or 1886, when the Berlin Conference happened. It's like everybody, the predation still is there, and we should not be naive. I mean, countries have interests, and this global competition actually leads to that. What we need to do is actually to work together as Africans to see how we can negotiate better deals that benefit our people, that builds our infrastructure, our industries. So yes, Yeah, I mean, a mediator interested in having their interests, it's fine, but also us having our interests is also there. And so I want to believe that all the heads of state who went to Washington on the 4th of December, when this agreement was signed, that they know exactly what they're doing and they know how they were engaging the US parties.
Looking at the minerals across the continent, and this is not just for Congo, but even South Africa was facing a crisis with Trump last year, with saying we will, if you don't sell this, our tariffs are gonna, we're gonna hit you with tariffs more. How best now that you've said these you've called it the minerals
Yeah,
something?
African Mineral Agency, yes.
Yes. How best is the plan to work on this so that then the continent benefits? Because like we saw in Burkina Faso, they cut off. In Botswana, we understand they're signing deals with the company that buys the diamond in terms of buying stake.
I think that the real I think the real issue is how the real issue is for us to develop principles on how we engage our external partners, the conversation we have. I remember one time being in a meeting and one head of state of the continent saying that there are three things that we should ensure all the time when we're engaging with our partners. Number one is mutual respect. Number two is mutual accountability. Number three is strategic communication, constant strategic communication, because situations evolve. Number four is to make sure that we communicate clearly and in uncertain terms to our populations about what we are doing. So I think for me, without going into the minerals or other things, because actually you talk about the minerals, but I will tell you there's something else which is much more important that global powers are seeking. It's the control of our maritime routes.
Yeah, yeah.
Most people don't talk about it, but it's really important because controlling the Mediterranean, controlling the Red Sea has become a critical, it's a strategic objective. So we need to have conversations about how we deal with our partners in a way that we mutually respect each other and we hold each other accountable.
So that sounds very, on paper sounds great, but in terms of, I don't know how much you would share in terms of what was developed for the minerals, and now you've mentioned the maritime. How are we as a continent? Like what stake are we putting in terms of we need respect on these are our terms and conditions as a continent?
Thank you so much for asking me that. I think actually, you know, the African Union, with all its flaws, and multilateralism is sophisticated, it's complicated,
Yeah.
but actually we need it more than ever now. And why? Because we at the continental level develop policies which actually protects our weaker member states. In other words, we by developing a common African position on how to deal with these issues, it helps us not to go into these negotiations in the matter that we're scattered, and therefore where people are able to take advantage of us. So what we need to do is just to perfect the way we engage our member states, but also our member states to have a little bit of faith in us. Because at the end of the day, the African Union is not the Secretariat or the Commission, which sits in Addis Ababa. It is its member states.
Yeah.
And we are only as strong as they want us to be. If they want us weak, we will be weak. But if they want us to be strong, we will be strong. I had a beautiful experience one time, and I went to Namibia, Windhoek. Did you know that in Namibia, before they begin any event, they have the national anthem, then they have the African Union anthem. Do you know the African Union anthem?
Never heard of it. I just know the East African anthem.
You just know the East African anthem, but even the East African anthem, not many people know about it. But yo, the African Union for us as a continent, where we have stronger states, weaker states, and so on, middle states, we needed to protect us because everything nowadays, look at all the global conflict. For some reason, we're not responsible for it, but it ends up here on the continent.
Yeah.
Our continent becomes the turf for conflicts.
And it's interesting you're saying in terms of protecting weaker states, and of course we have the ones that are a bit stronger. And I want to look at this, looking at Kenya hosted it was called the Africa
Forward
Summit.
It was
where
11th
we,
of May.
yes, and we had President
Macron.
Macron in this country. And the region of West Africa was not very happy with us.
I'm not aware of that. Really?
Yeah, I'm making you aware.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I thought they attended the well.
Okay, not all.
That's
Let's
what
just be clear.
I understand. That, maybe you're talking about those countries which have strong sentiments vis-a-vis France,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay, I get it. That, yeah.
So when you look at that and you're talking about protecting each other, how do countries across Africa ensure, even when we go to deals with, let's say, France, you go to, maybe Burundi go to deals with the US, we're still protecting each other as a continent in a way?
That's the role for the African Union, and I'll tell you why. Most people do not know, but just so you know, ahead of the Africa Forward Summit, the African Union actually issued different papers on matters of energy, on matters of trade, on matters of peace and security to our member states, our common position
As African Union.
as African Union.
Okay.
So they came armed with those positions when they came to the Africa Forward Summit. So I think that what we as the African Union need to do is to make sure that whether we go into a Africa US summit, Africa Turkey summit, Africa Italy summit, and so on and so forth, that we make sure that we have our common position ready made so that we can guide our member states so that we don't go scattered. Now, it becomes complicated because every country have interest, but at least there are some core principles we should be able to agree on and that we should take forward.
In terms of rating how these core principles are adhered to by the different leaders, how would you rate the unity of the continent and the different leadership?
I would say it's like the weather. Sometimes it's sunny, sometimes it rains, sometimes there is snow, sometimes there is neither. Depends on individual chemistry between the leaders, depends on country's interest. There are many factors, but what we try to do is to really try to bridge the gaps as much as possible. Imagine having 55 people in a room and trying to get them to agree on something. By the way, someone was telling me that this is not only an African Union problem. Even within the European Union, there are 27. To get them to agree on something is always a challenge.
Have you had a meeting where you've had all the 55 of them attend same meeting?
They are always represented. Having every heads of state,
Yes.
it's not always the case. But for us, we only, if we have 2/3, we're happy.
Good.
But they are all represented. Yes, our February meetings, the annual AU summit meetings, they are all represented. Maybe what we need to work more on is to make sure that our agenda is much more focused to deal with the issues of the day, because sometimes many member states have complained that our agendas are a bit heavy. We're not dealing with the issues that we have to deal with. So that is something we are working on. Actually, Kenya has been selected to be the champion of reform after President Kagame of Rwanda did his reform report, and then he handed over now to Kenya to President William Ruto. And I'm happy to inform you that actually this month of August, we'll be going to Luanda, Angola, to look into how do we make the AU fit for purpose, particularly as it pertains to issues of peace and security. So Kenya will be taking the lead in this.
Okay, that's nice. At least we're taking something and we hope we can deliver.
Yes.
We always want to leave the continent
Yes.
better. Speaking of which, us taking as that part in the conflicts across our neighbors, Sudan, what's the status and what is AU saying about that?
So the issue of Sudan really, Tony Blair used to talk about the scar on our conscience. It's a scar on our conscience. This conflict has been going on for 3 years. We saw it coming. There in Sudan, what we are looking for is a ceasefire between the belligerents. Unfortunately, right now, there is fragmentation across the board. And even if they wanted to have a ceasefire, there are many smaller groups which have been formed, which actually which it creates it which makes it much more difficult to bring the parties together. The second part is that we want to make sure that we have a political process, and that's what we've been focusing on, because fundamentally the issues of Sudan are political. Most people tend to forget that actually the conflict that is happening in Sudan is a coup against the revolution that happened to overthrow the regime of President Bashir. The civilians actually overthrew the regime, brought a civilian administration, and it was overthrown by actually the two parties which are in conflict today. So we want to make sure that there is a political process that actually restores constitutional order. And we've been working at that. We have what we call the quintet, which basically brings together a group of countries with influence: the European Union, the US, African Union, and I think there is Saudi Arabia and others. Anyway, the quintet. So we're working on that, and then there is a third element which is extremely important, because Sudan, in addition to the fighting that is happening, is also a humanitarian crisis,
Yeah.
serious
Yeah.
humanitarian crisis. Hundreds and thousands of people who have been displaced, numbers of refugees, but also horrendous crimes have been committed there, serious crimes. And we want to make sure that there is accountability for the crimes which have been committed. All of you got to see what happened in Darfur, what happened in El Obeid. And so we're trying to look into how do we put an end to this? How do we also pressure the external actors which are involved? And then there is another element to this, which is important, is how do we secure regional consensus on the way forward? Because the region also has a role to play, not only to stop the flow of arms, but also how they can get the parties or apply pressure for them to end the conflict. Unfortunately, we still have a long way to go.
We have a long way to go. As a Kenyan, and this I'm speaking as a Kenyan, and I'm sure a lot of Kenyans are concerned, we have seen one of the people involved in that conflict interact with our president not once, not twice. In fact, they laid a red carpet in State House. When African Union sees such things, what is the feeling like? And then with that, do you understand why people feel like the African Union is not really helping the people?
I can see why people can feel that way, but let's look at it the other way around. If you don't engage the parties, how can you make peace? You can only make peace if you engage the parties. So I don't know. I mean, I won't go into the local politics of Kenya, but I'm sure that if you're going to be able to secure a ceasefire, you have to engage them. Yes, he has been received in Kenya, but he's also been in South Africa, he's been in Uganda, he's been in Rwanda, he's been in different countries. So it's because I think the countries of the region want to be able to engage the different parties and see how they can bring about a ceasefire. Yes.
So the business of arms and the call for silencing the guns has, I think now African Union, one of your biggest, every communique comes with silencing the guns. At what point will you silence these guns? How many more years do we await?
Actually, it's a flagship project of the African Union. And in fact, we like to joke and say that as much as we want to silence the guns, actually the guns are becoming louder.
Yeah.
We started by, our objective was 2020, and then we kept adding years in terms of what we need to do. It's work in progress. Yesterday I was telling someone that actually out of 55 member states of the African Union, about 35 are either in conflict or about to go into conflict, or there is no peace or there is no war. So, but we can't be superficial in terms of how we address this issue. We need to really go down deep and look at what has gone wrong. And one thing that we keep looking at is governance. Governance, our member states being able to deliver services to their people, but also the management of diversity, which is a major challenge. How do we manage diversity? How do we put in place mechanism to ensure that there is constant monitoring, to ensure that there is institutions that does actually address imbalances, and to ensure that there is a conversation where there is a problem. So that is something that has been a challenge for actually, it's not only an African problem, it's everywhere, the management of diversity.
Then how does African Union move from what now people cite? I don't know if you've seen this joke online where they say nowadays anything happens, it's a chat GPT generated, we condemn. How do we move from that to people actually seeing that African Union is actually taking action if they have the powers?
Again, the African Union is its member states. It's what they allow us to do and what they don't allow us to do. When the African Union was created in 2002, it was after what had happened, the Rwandan genocide against the Tutsis. It was actually there were many coups d'états. Our founding fathers said we need to reform the African Union, and there were two main principles which they agreed on. One was the responsibility to protect. Two was non-indifference. But these principles, which actually are in our AU Constitutive Act, we're finding challenges to address them because our member states constantly invoke sovereignty. Every time we want to intervene in a situation, our member states invoke sovereignty. So we need to figure out a way, how do we have a conversation with our member states so that they don't invoke sovereignty? I can tell you for a fact, I led the early warning division for more than 10 years. And I can tell you for a fact that there is not a single conflict we didn't see coming. But every time we wanted to intervene, some member states would tell us this is an internal affairs. And then until things were on BBC, and then now they'll be interested in us getting involved. So we've seen these issues come up. I think we need to have an introspection, have a conversation with ourselves, and see how we can deal with this issue of sovereignty. Because also sovereignty in our Constitutive Act, it says sovereignty is responsibility.
And many want sovereignty without
Responsibility.
being responsible. That's okay. I understand that coin is a bit two-sided, really.
Yeah.
But in terms of management of diversity across the continent, and I'll use the case study of, say, in Kenya, it's more of a tribal diversity. Maybe a country like Tanzania, tribe for them is not one of those things. But here in Kenya, tribe diversity is something. How does then the African Union come in? You see, like now Kenya is heading to an election come next year, 2027. The election in Kenya affects across member states because Kenya technically is a leader in the region. Then how does African Union watch what is happening now to ensure by the time we're heading to an election, then we're not having a conflict in Kenya that now becomes a conflict across?
Well, for us, we are constantly engaging our member states. We're constantly actually raising issues where they need to be raised. But we fundamentally believe that actually the number one responsibility is the government of the country to make sure that all voices are heard, that the process is transparent, and so on and so forth. In fact, we deploy electoral observation missions. And Kenya we've been actually engaging with the country for even during the crisis. Was it 2017 or?
Yeah.
Yeah, 2017. And we will be most likely engaging the country in the lead up to the elections. But one thing that actually reassures me here in Kenya is that it's a vibrant democracy. It has, people have conversations on constantly. You have social media, which is free, it's open. And actually, people hold each other accountable. I remember one time when there was a crisis in Kenya, my father once asked me, do you think that this thing is going to last for long? And we joked. I said to him, I don't think so. And he said, why? I said, because, Kenyans have mastered the art of deal making. They may come close to the brink, but they always manage to have a settlement. And then my father laughed. He says, no, Kenyans love money too much to keep in conflict.
Well.
And I thought that was funny. So
Yeah.
you have a vibrant economy which needs to run. So you have, hardworking people.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. Yeah, that people outside already know our love for money will not allow us to be in conflict
For too long.
Yeah. Okay. The other thing would be the question about the militia groups, because we've seen this happen in Kenya recently. And now the question I actually wonder sometimes is if we are seeing what is happening. What Sudan is there because of militia groups. Congo is there because of the same, the M23 and the jihadists. From the African Union perspectives, what's your solution to these militia groups across the continent?
Well, first and foremost, those conditions that creates these armed groups? By the way, they are not all the same. I mean, there are some who have legitimate causes they are fighting for. There are those who are criminal enterprises. There are those which are terrorist organizations. So they're different.
Yeah.
But fundamentally, what needs to be addressed is, like I said before, it's the issues of governance which create those conditions. No one wants to wake up a day and take up arms, and because actually, when you take up arms, 99% chances are that someone is going to shoot back at you and kill you.
Yeah.
No one wants to die. So we need to address those issues that create those groups. We need to show solidarity, cooperation among our states to deal with those issues, because clearly someone is supplying those weapons.
Yeah.
Someone is sustaining, because to fight a war is expensive. Let me give you an example that what most people don't know. An AK-47 has about 30 bullets in it. One bullet is $30. No, it's $1, sorry. So you're looking at a charger magazine for the AK-47, that's about $30.
Yeah.
Do you see how expensive that is? And imagine that you have about 5,000 militias and each one of them has an AK-47. Who is supplying, who's paying for those things? Here in Kenya, we have what we call Rexa, which is the seat of the regional, the continental organization, actually, which deals with small arms and things like that. So, one, addressing the root causes of these issues. Two, really having a technical level cooperation, intelligence sharing, information sharing, to address those issues. Yes.
And speaking of the sustenance of this, the firearms, isn't it then sad? Because even this militia, they're the poor people actually. Because I'm not even, you're sustaining poor people fighting with expensive weapons without them really understanding sometimes even the involvement in the crisis.
I think we need to attend to our most vulnerable people. If we don't attend to them, they say that the devil's workshop is an idle mind.
It's the other way.
Or another mind is a devil's
Yes.
workshop. Yes,
Yes.
the other way. Yeah. We need to attend to them and really create opportunities for them so that they don't go into those illegal activities. And I think that more efforts needs to be put into not only employment but also addressing grievances. In 2017, the UNDP released a report about the path to violent extremism. And in that report, they talked about how 97% of people said that they had joined extremist organizations because actually the state had abused them, or because security forces had abused them. Not because of ideology,
Yeah.
not because of madrasas, not because of churches or whatever, but because the state had failed them and because the state had abused them. So we need to also look into how, every time that we talk about human rights on the African continent, it's as if it's a nice to have, but in reality, it's a must have.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they're not practicing.
No. And really honestly, because where human rights are violated, people will ensure that it's even scientifically, like when your body has an external element threatening it, it reacts.
Yeah.
So the issue of human rights, it's not a nice to have, it's a must have.
It's interesting you've mentioned that, and I think Kenya needs to take note of what you have mentioned. People becoming extremists because they were abused by the government. I'm sure everyone in the continent knows what happened in Kenya in 2024 with the Gen Z uprising, and then there were young people that were shot by police simply because they went out to express their, democratic rights. But what I would want now to ask is the East African region. We know Kizza Besigye is in prison in Uganda, abducted from Kenya, where he had come to attend an event where one of our presidential candidates, Martha Karua, was launching her book. Tundu Lissu in Tanzania is also detained. And all this, and we have Kenyans that were actually arrested in Tanzania, tortured, brought back. And now we feel like there's a regional agreement to, kill democracy, kill freedom of speech and all this. Is this the situation, and what is AU doing about it? I mean, we saw Kizza Besigye faint in court. Was it yesterday or the day before?
Each case, I don't know the details about each one of these cases, but I know what I read in the newspapers just like everybody else. But what I do know is that there has been a conversation within the East African community, within the region, to look at the state of our democracy, to look at the issues that have happened, whether it's the Tanzanian elections. There's also a conversation within Uganda as well, and these are ongoing conversations. But really, at the end of the day, what I do believe in is that human rights, like I said, it's not a nice to have, it's a must have, because eventually it breeds something else which can actually create even more problems. So we at the AU, we have norms. We even have the Commission on Human Rights, actually, which addresses some of these issues. They have even issued statements on some of these crises you mentioned. We try to make sure that our member states abide by their obligations and that they create that space. But most importantly, that they understand that where human rights is not upheld, you're actually it's like you're in a house with a gas cylinder and you have matchboxes. You're creating a situation that will eventually create a conflict. It's not easy conversations, but they are ongoing, and I really do hope that people should be able to have their opinions without being persecuted.
Okay. When you see, of course, you're saying usually AU sees these conflicts before they happen, and I'm sure you engage the leaders. Usually, generally, what's the feeling like? What is usually there? Because you can tell when a crisis is coming, and then
Yeah, there are complicated conversations because first and foremost, when you raise an issue, some of our member states feel that it's like someone entering into your house and telling you how to run your house. So it's not an easy conversation to have. But we say to them, look, we're seeing this. Can you please, we're trying to understand what's happening. Can you please tell us? And then can you tell us how we can assist you to really address these issues? That's how we go about it. It's not always easy. We've had situations where actually even some countries make it about the individual who is representing the institution actually trying to address these issues. But these are conversations we must have.
Yeah.
We have issues of succession in some of our countries. We need to have these conversations and say, hey, we have seen this behavior here. Is it okay? We need to hold each other accountable. Actually, the one missing element is the idea of how do we hold each other accountable. And that is one thing that I think we are struggling with.
So AU has no mechanisms for that.
Well, there is a conversation about what we call the sanctions regime. We have the Lome Declaration, whereby if there is a coup, the only thing the thing that we can do is to suspend that country, right? Now we've been discussing what we call a sanction regime, where you have a member state that is really misbehaving, killing its people, and so on and so forth. We're looking into a sanction regime on how do we hold them accountable? How do we intervene? How do we really live by our charter? how do we implement our norms and frameworks that we have adopted? I know it sounds like a lot of salad words here for your average citizen,
Yeah.
but there's also what we call the back channel diplomacy.
Yeah.
We have the panel of the wise. No one talks about the panel of the wise. By the way, we also have the panel of the wise in the East African community. Why do we have the panel of the wise? The idea of creating the panel of the wise was that these are individuals who, of a certain age, they've been statesmen, stateswomen that can speak their mind. So sometimes we deploy this panel of the wise members to really speak truth to power, and that is needed. So we are looking into doing a bit more of that. It tends to be discreet, and that's an exercise that is ongoing.
I would want to know how the panel of the wise would address Museveni.
He's a wise man.
Exactly my question, because you see, you touched about succession politics across different region, and one of them we know is Uganda. For obvious reasons, the man is old. I mean, sometimes we just have to speak the truth. So probably he's not running again. But as it is evident that if he exited the stage today, General Muhoozi would be the one to take over from the look of things as an outsider. As a Kenyan, we are not also very comfortable with General Muhoozi because of the things he has tweeted about this country and wanting to attack Nairobi.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, that one I'm speaking as a Kenyan. I know you're Burundian. Probably you have a different feeling about him. But from your perspective, maybe, I don't know if this is personal or from the AU feeling. When you see a president like Museveni having his son as the general in the same country he's leading, what is usually the feeling like, and how do you plan to, in case of anything?
Well, there is something that we tend to forget in many African countries, is that all our countries are run by constitutions.
Well, some we feel like they are suspended. I know you wouldn't say it, but I can say it because I am Kenyan.
Yes.
I'm allowed.
No, but all our constitutions, they have a way how these things are done. Of course, there is what is on the paper, and then there's what happens.
Yeah.
But that is why most of the time we need to make sure that those texts, that when people are swearing in to become president or to swear to become an MP or a minister, you swear on the Bible, you swear on what, or the Quran,
Constitution.
and you swear on the Constitution.
Yeah.
And you say that you will abide faithfully by the Constitution, and you say, "So help me God." So we want to believe that we want to have and that's me. I think we should have a conversation about making sure that the Constitution is respected. That way, we avoid any speculation or anything that happens. That's what I can say about that.
Okay. I will also say that I saw a tweet where he says he respects you so much,
Oh,
Muhoozi,
yes.
but somehow he doesn't respect Kenya. Why do you think he respects you so much as a leader in the African Union?
Because I respect him too. As a human being, I respect him, and there's often what we see out there and then what the reality is. And he's the commander-in-chief of the Ugandan People's Defense Forces. Just by that title, I respect him.
Okay. Kenyans will have a lot to say on that. A lot.
Yes.
Now, let me take you to a different topic. When President Trump came into power in January 2025, some of the decisions he made was particular in affecting Africa was on the funding from the health sector. Here in Kenya, it was UN, the health one, UNEP.
UNEP.
No, was it UNEP?
UNEP. But
The
there
one
was
that
also
was funding the
USAID also.
yes, it's the USAID I was looking for. So I was withdrawing this funding. And I'm sure even South Africa, I know, faced the same, and several African countries. What lessons are Africans learning from Trump's quote-unquote selfish means of putting America first?
We should put Africa first. I think that actually, that's my opinion. First of all, it's unfortunate because we need to cooperate globally. But I do think that actually it's also an opportunity for Africans to really pull our socks and to really fund our own Ambitions. As a matter of fact, yesterday, I think, no, 28th, 29th, when there was the Executive Council, they talked about a 0.2% levy to fund our own ambitions. Africa is not poor. We have the resources, we have what is needed. And I think that for me, now more than ever, actually is the time for regional economic integration, continental integration, because that is the only way we'll be able to actually absorb the shocks or absorb the pulling of funds. People are looking at the US withdrawing money, but the reality is, and I deal with international partnerships, it's a trend. They've all been looking inwards. For example, right now, the European Union is still contributing, but they're more and more looking inwards because they feel that they need to invest more in their defense vis-a-vis what's happening between Russia and Ukraine. Now, even some of the Middle East countries, which used to be our partners, they're also looking inwards to say, hey, we are in an unstable environment. Let's more look into that. So for me, I think that we too, as Africans, should look inwards to fund our own ambitions. And I think the time is now more than ever.
More than ever. What do you think has been holding us back?
I think that this, dependency has become a culture. Dependency has become a culture, and I think that we have not been innovative enough or looked into different ways of being innovative in terms of supporting each other. There was one time a leader on the continent who once said that it's much easier to fund someone who will fund a private jet for you to travel to see them than to find money for a school or hospital. So I would say three things. One, strategic clarity to recognize the times we're in and the urgency of now. Two, capacity, making sure that we have the right people in the right place and who really care about our continent. Three, having clear priorities. And that's what I think has been holding us back.
Okay, that's nice. Across the continent, we've seen youth uprisings happening. Started in Kenya, went to Tanzania, went to Uganda, went to Mozambique, and it keeps morphing across different continents. And the outcry has been these old guards are not understanding the crisis that the continent is going through. They are part of the reason why we're going through that. And so people are pushing for younger leadership, sort of. Is that a solution towards that?
I think that what is happening on our continent is that our young people, their standards in terms of what they can tolerate have changed completely. What my generation, the millennials and others, could tolerate and be comfortable with, this new generation is not okay with it. We see it every day with our children and holding us accountable about what's happening in the world, in the region. I looked at what was happening in Israel on the 7th of October, Gaza, how they are so much involved. They are following the crisis in Eastern Congo, Darfur. They are aware. They have information, and they want better. They want more. Actually, for me, I see these uprising as a sign that people want rupture, as a sign that people want better, and a sign that people will not tolerate business as usual. Yeah.
Are these old people willing to exit stage?
They will have no choice. I think there's a country where I saw some parliamentarians running when the young people were just storming a parliament somewhere. And that was not a good feeling. And I think that they will have no choice. They will be. I think that we also need to look into how in our laws to have certain limits in terms of age and so on and so forth. At our jobs, we retire at 60, right?
Yeah.
Within the African Union, I can assure you that the day I turn 60, my email will block me. I won't even have access to the compound. It's automatic.
Yeah.
Why can't we have that in public life? Making sure that we have a cap in terms of, yes, we do need the wisdom of our elders, definitely. But also we do need to have a cap That's what I believe. So that, by the way, also so that we can create, new ideas, new way of thinking. I think we need that.
Okay. The other thing I would want to understand is technology is playing a very big part in different aspects of our lives. In terms of leading the security, peace and security, what's the adoption of tech that like AU is looking at to change the continent?
Well, let me tell you, this is a subject that is very close, dear to my heart, because I've been looking into artificial intelligence and peace and security. First and foremost, artificial intelligence holds many promises, not only in terms of early warning, because with artificial intelligence, you are capable of identifying, where a country is vulnerable and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Second, in terms of also intelligence gathering, so even during our peacekeeping mission, it really helps us a great deal. But it also holds challenges that we don't quite fully yet understand. For example, misinformation,
Yeah.
hate speech. We have developed actually a strategy for that, and the AU Peace and Security Council is seized with this issue, and we may actually even appoint a special envoy on artificial intelligence and peace and security, just to really focus and zoom in on that. Most people tend to talk about artificial intelligence and health, artificial in education and so on, but peace and security, few talked about it. Even the way wars are being fought today has changed. It's drones. No longer it's no longer fought the way we used to fight them.
Yeah.
So we are really looking into it. Even peacekeeping. By the way, I don't know if some of you saw, there was I think it was in China, where there was a robot which was shown as a peacekeeper, as a model of a robot. Yes,
Oh, haven't
as
seen that.
yes, as a future peacekeeper. So it is important, but most importantly is we need to harmonize our laws so that this new technology benefits us but doesn't cripple us or doesn't overtake us.
Okay. Are there lessons that Africa is taking from the war in Russia, Ukraine, Iran, US, Israel?
Yeah, one lesson we're taking is that we need regional integration more than ever to shield ourselves from economic or external shocks. That's the one lesson because this conflict is not only affecting us economically, we're all seeing the prices of fuel rising.
Yeah.
I'm glad that we have seen also some great things like Aliko Dangote of Nigeria, working to see how he can provide gas products to our member states. And I hear he will be opening a refinery very soon in Kenya as well. We have seen actually countries like Spain and Italy going to Algeria for products. So there are things we should be doing as African. So in my view, the number one lesson is let's first shield ourselves from whatever can come from externally and that can disrupt us.
Okay. The issue of fuel crisis, of course, with the Strait of Hormuz, and I've forgotten the name of the other belt they are closing. Yes. When you see that, and you know very well Africa has enough oil, so they say, to sustain us. Are we serious in terms of fixing this?
Let me tell you, actually, I've been reading a lot about this. It's interesting. Many African countries produce oil, but we do not have refineries
Yeah.
to kind of transform it. As a matter of fact, a country like Angola was told that the oil it produces, it sends it to Hong Kong to be refined. And Nigeria actually used to also produce its oil, refine it, and then sell it to the US.
Yeah.
And then they will import even a much more higher price. I don't know the business of oil, but what I do know is that we need to build infrastructure to transform our own products. And that's what actually is happening right now. And in my view, like I said, there's do you know how Chinese call a crisis? They call it Wei Ji. It means, that's how they define a crisis. It means crisis and opportunity. That for every crisis there is an opportunity.
Yeah.
And the way I want to look at it is that all these crises that we're faced with, there is an opportunity for us to actually have a conversation among ourselves, build the infrastructure that we need to build, have regional integration, and even have political federation, which is a conversation that is happening here. Because with political federation, we hold each other accountable.
Yeah.
And I would like to finish with this, this is something that I hold dear. Do you know Africans don't know each other?
Yeah. That I agree.
I once went to Nigeria and I said that I was from Burundi, and they asked me, "Where is that?"
No way.
I'm telling you, we don't know each other.
Nigerian.
Well, I'm mentioning Nigeria because this is something that I experienced, and I had to tell them, Nigeria is close to Congo. Oh, Congo, yes, that they know, but these, you know, and even if you go to South Africa as well, you talk to some people, they will tell you, when I tell them I'm going back home, oh, you're going to Africa.
From South Africa?
Yes, some conversation like that. We don't know each other. You go into schools here and ask kids, what is the capital of Burundi? They will not be able to tell you. Very few will be able to tell you.
Yeah.
What is the capital of Malawi? Just basic things. And I think us liberating ourselves and emancipating ourselves will start with us getting to know each other.
And that means we need a borderless continent.
Correct.
How soon can we achieve this borderless continent?
Well, I am actually very optimistic. Now, of course, with all these Afrophobia and things that we're seeing here, but I think that's politicians stirring the pot to avoid their own shortcomings. But if you look at the reports of our regional economic commissions, actually, the East African community, we've done quite well. In the East African community, me as a Burundian, I can go to Tanzania, I can go to Uganda, I can go to Kenya, spend 3 months there, and then get out, so on and so forth. In the East African community, we've done quite well. But I will say that here's what is interesting. The Continental Free Trade Agreement has been signed and ratified, if I'm not mistaken, out of the 55 member states by almost 54. And the only country which has not signed is actually Eritrea. 54. That's huge.
Yeah.
But look at the contradiction that exists in Africa. So we signed the Continental Free Trade Agreement, but the protocol on the free movement of people and goods, only 4 member states have signed it and ratified it. And I always scratch my head and I think, so how are you going to trade if you don't allow people to move freely and goods? But the economic reality of the world will force us to do so, whether we like it or not.
It's sad that we have to wait for the realities to check in. I think the last thing I would want to handle is there's a lot of, what are they called? Defense agreements signed by different countries with the West, mostly Turkey, talk of Germany, France, and all this, but took for Kenya. And there's also a lot of military presence of these Westerners in Africa, but we do not have Africa missions in the West. Why is this, and how important is this?
Well, countries have interest, and I'm assuming that the leaders who make those decisions to host these bases and so on and so forth, I think they do a cost-benefit analysis and they look at, okay, what are we going to benefit from, and so on and so forth. What I worry more about, it's not the external actors having their bases here. What I worry more about is about our checks and balances in our countries.
Yeah.
What do our parliaments do? We have MPs who are supposed to be representing us, asking those questions, probing, and so on and so forth. Has anyone ever thought about what does our legislatures do in our countries? What are the powers they have? Or they're just a rubber stamping institution? I think we really need to interrogate that, because why are citizens speculating about something when they have representatives who are paid to look into that and asking the right questions and demanding answers, and we're not getting it? I think that's something that has been troubling me for quite some time. I've never seen a parliament very few parliaments on the continent where they check the executive when they're making decisions. Think about it.
That is for every Kenyan now. That is very critical.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it's because we, as you said, we are a very alive democracy, so there's a lot of questioning of our members of parliament. But yeah, it is what it is. Are we, as a continent, are we well prepared in terms of security if the continent was to face, I don't know, external attacks, now that we do not even have a united Africa military sort of? How prepared are we security-wise?
I so enjoyed this question because we have something that we called ASIC. Have you ever heard about ASIC?
No.
I think it was the African Common Intervention Force or something like that. I have to look into it. And there were some countries which were proponent of it. And the idea, in fact, we have what we call the Common African Defense Policy, which was adopted in 2004. And the Common African Defense Policy, I remember you were talking about President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni of Uganda. He once said, what if today we wake up and we have a superpower that is populated, that wants to dominate us and sends 5 divisions, north, east, southwest, and they already own our economies? What would we do
Today? Nothing. Sadly.
As a continent? But here is one thing that is extremely important. President William Ruto of Kenya has called for a common African foreign policy. And I thought that was extremely interesting because, and for me, someone asked me, what would be the pillars of the common African foreign policy? And I said there will be 4 pillars. 1, the respect for international law, not because it's a nice thing to have, but because it protects the weaker states. 2, regional economic integration, like I said, free movement of people, free movement of goods, trading between us. 3, a common African position to actually be prepared to protect our key infrastructure and our supply chains. And then the last part is a common African voice in international forums. And this is the conversation that is ongoing. And so I find it very interesting that the fact that we're even talking about common African foreign policy, for me, I think is great. And I think it's, I know that some people think that, you can never have all these 55 member states have a common African policy. But surely we can have some principles that are broad enough that can help us guide our conversation going forward.
Okay. Sounds very interesting, but I would want to understand. Do you think we can get to a common foreign policy before we get a common currency? Because how are we trading with 50, maybe like 50 currencies as a continent, maybe 30 something because of the ECOWAS.
As a matter of fact, part of economic integration actually is also that. It's also about harmonizing our economic policies and so on and so forth. So, and I think that the aspiration is there. In fact, even here in the East African community, we even have a name of a future currency. I can't remember what it is, but we even have a name for the future currency. You cannot have regional economic integration if you don't harmonize your financial and economic policies.
But these aspirations, why do years on, that thing you say developed in 2002, we are in 2026. We now have Agenda 2063. And we're going to get to 2063 without a common currency. And then now, we keep losing because we're just dealing with these as aspirations. But implementation.
One thing I'm enjoying is these questions that you're asking me. And I know you don't know a friend of mine who I was talking to just yesterday, but he was asking me the same questions. Here is one answer that I gave him without giving him too much verbiage or anything. So long as we do not get into politics, meaning those of us who feel that that we have a voice and things that we need to do, if we're not in politics, the wrong people will be in politics and make decisions on our behalf. Why is it that we don't have a conversation about young people on the continent getting involved in running for office? Most people tell you it's dirty. I don't want to be killed, right? But how can we sanitize our politics so that young people can go into office and compete and really where the competition becomes about ideas and moving our continent forward? Right now, when you look at people who go into politics and you look at the people who should be in politics, who are just out there writing articles or doing research, academic research, you wonder, so how do we want to advance our continent? Because at the end of the day, the real issue is about leadership. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I think that's a good parting shot. Leadership is the crisis we have.
Yeah.
But thank you so much, Ambassador, for coming through. It's good to at least understand what is happening from the African point of view, and also now for us who question from this side, because also that the last parting shot is a very challenging perspective, and especially to Kenyans, we're going to an elections. We've been talking and we will keep talking, but talking without action will still be aspirational, and we need to go beyond the aspirations to reality. Thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you.
You're always welcome.
Thank you so much, and I wish Kenyans a good election. This is a beautiful country with beautiful people and people who have a lot of talent, and we wish you all the best. And do not forget, when Kenya gets a cold, we all cough in the region. Thank you.
Thank you. So the region, make sure you support us nicely so we don't you don't get the flu, because it will for sure find you. But thank you so much to you who's been watching this episode. We'll catch you on the next one.